Welcome to this Thursday edition of Bury Your Bookie. I'm Jeff DeForest, joined as always on these Thursdays, and I wouldn't mind if he was with me every day because I always love talking degenerate gambling activity with one Mike Jones, big baseball fan. There were a lot of developments, so we're going to touch on that before we get into the football, which has some very exciting matchups, both on the college playing field and in the pros as well. Some real, as my good friend Al Bernstein would always say when he was talking about two fighters in the early preliminary 4-round bouts making their pro debut, an intriguing matchup. So we have some intriguing NFL matchups as well. But this is the time of the year. I was reading some minutia about the bottom end of the Knicks roster in my New York Post today. Already getting some hockey steam. You have the baseball playoffs on the horizon. Last weekend of the regular season is on tap here, and 3-4 games left for a lot of teams. Last night was incredible with some of the things that happened in Major League Baseball, Mike. And then we are taking advantage. Al Kaline and Norm Cash and Gates Brown, Mickey Lolich, Denny McClain, all rolling over in their collective graves or individual graves. I don't think they're all in one grave, but they may as well be buried along with the Detroit Tigers. We're using the theory that when things go wrong, they go really wrong and often stay that way, spiraling out of control. Tigers have now lost 8 in a row. We were on the Guardians both the previous night and last night as well. Come up, we beat Scooball in the first game that we gave out and ended up cashing again last night with the Guardians, who now take over first place. Remarkable. I mean, I love collapses in Major League Baseball, going all the way back. First time I really followed a major collapse was the 64 Phillies. I think they were up 6 and a hook with 10 games to go, ended up losing. Gene Mox spraying the locker room with spare ribs in a fit of rage. Cubs had that big collapse, I believe, in '69 when the Mets, Miracle Mets, ended up winning their first World Series. And so we've seen this before, but I was looking yesterday at a grid on ESPN. The Tigers are up 14 and a half games on their nearest pursuer, which was not the Guardians, as of July 8th. And now find themselves barely clinging desperately to a wild card spot and out of first place by a game to the Guardians. And then on top of that, we had all this home run development last night. 8 homers by the Phillies. Cal Raleigh goes for number 60 last night. Aaron Judge, his 4th 50 home run season. He hits 2 in the Yankees' obliteration of the White Sox. I know you love baseball, and that's one of the things I really like about having you on the show, because a lot of people just overlook it, especially when you get into the football season. But what were some of your observations about what's going on in Major League Baseball right now? Seattle clinches the AL West, and so puts Houston in a lot of jeopardy because they're one game out of a wild card. A lot of interesting stuff.
I got 3 of them. Obviously, we talked about the first one, that the Guardians run against the Tigers, and I have a friend of mine who's a season ticket to Detroit. Doesn't even want to talk to me about it. That's that depressing for him. But yeah, it's just, to me, it's epic. And I was talking about Scooball hitting Fry in the face and not be able to come down from it. A different reaction you've ever seen players do, almost like if he didn't know anybody, he wanted to run right toward it and make sure he was okay and help out the medical people, if you really look at it. And I think that was startling to me, just the reaction, how upset he got. And then he makes that key error in that game to put them ahead. I just look at it like this is just the day's athlete. They don't handle all this stuff, adversity, very well. And I think this is a kind of thing that you're going to look back at and say, okay, now the benefits of Tigers is to collapse out west of Houston. So now Houston has lost a division, which they had a big lead against Seattle. And now Houston's a game behind Detroit. So if they keep going and lose again, they might lose their way out and Detroit sneaks in. I mean, it's remarkable. The A's, who are moving to Vegas sometime soon, have taken 2 against Brown. And today they got Valdez, who's been struggling too with, saying some things behind the camera that you wouldn't like if you're in the locker room with the guy. So I don't know if you take the A's again today. I mean, it's incredible what's happening. And in the National League, the Mets are only up a game with all that payroll and all that money and all that. And now you got the Diamondbacks who trade out their team, trade out their 2 best power hitters,
Sure,
and end up coming in there, and now they're a game back. And they almost steal a game last night from the Dodgers, whose bullpen can't get anybody out. They've blown through 3 and 4 run leads in the last 2 nights and get lucky to win in 11 last night to stay ahead of the Padres. Baseball is going to be wild, but it comes down to the mental makeup of these closing pitchers and how these teams react. And it's going to be so much fun to watch. And if you got to like a team, I'm still on Milwaukee at 20-1. I kind of like Philly. And in the American League, I think it's wide open. Toronto's a little bit of collapse, losing two straight when the division's on the line to Boston. I think it's remarkable. And I'll tell you what, crazy as this sounds, if Detroit somehow sneaks their way in, I think they're still a good problem. If
Wow.
somehow all is lost, they might just get a break of a lifetime and say we got no pressure on us, and all of a sudden they start playing. But my buddy was bringing up an interesting point, and I looked at the stat. They were Detroit on Sunday against Atlanta was 1 for 12 with runners in scoring position. Had first and second no out in the fourth and sixth inning, and doesn't even get a guy at third base. I mean, it's the game is so different now. They're down 2-0. That guy wants to hit a 3-run homer over swinging. Where I'm going to watch for the teams that try to move runners now as we get toward playoff time and try to play the more fundamental type baseball that I think you need to see come playoff time. So that's going to be interesting to watch the rest of the week.
That certainly was not the New York Mets last night. Their defense
Wow.
was horrendous. I watched them get shelled. I believe it was the third inning of their ball game with the Chicago Cubs, bottom of the third inning, and the Cubs might have been the second, where the Cubs had men on base against Tong in the first inning, couldn't do anything. And all of a sudden, they load the bases with nobody out, and it looked like one of those old mouse cartoons where they used to mambo around the bases and the scoreboard would be rolling 151, 152, 153. And it was insane to see the total lack of defense, including a guy scoring on a wild pitch from second base because the guy on the mound didn't cover home plate. And
Right.
I think it was, a guy's on second. He sees the pitcher standing there like a stiff, like a wooden Indian or wooden Native American, and it comes all the way around to score. And you're thinking that's horrible for a team in a pennant race. How big of a mental lapse can you have? But that being said, the Mets, the Reds, and the Diamondbacks all lose, so the Mets retain their one game wild card lead and still are in a position to make the postseason in spite of what has been abysmal fielding. Yankees seem to have turned things around. Now, they were picking on the White Sox last night, and Judge has been phenomenal. I mean, with these power numbers he's putting up to hit 325 and run away with the American League batting title, really, really impressive on his part. And he becomes the fourth guy, I guess, in Major League Baseball history to have 4 50 home run seasons. So quite an accomplishment. A lot of guys. Cal Raleigh became the fourth American leaguer to hit 60 home runs in a season, including Judge. So, a lot of accomplishments. Schwarber goes deep, 56 home runs for this guy. Many, many interesting developments. The team that we haven't mentioned, though, as we're talking about this, because they really haven't done anything extraordinary one way or the other of late, is Milwaukee, who was one of your favorites to win it all.
Yeah.
Are we overlooking the Milwaukee Brewers as we start talking about the postseason as a possibility to go ahead and win the World Championship this year?
I would be surprised if they're not in the championship series in the National League.
Okay.
I think it's going to come down to Philly and Milwaukee to play in that series. I think they're both going to end up with buys. The Dodgers, as much as high powered that lineup looks and all that, something's going to have to change in their bullpen because they're not going to get that 9-inning shutout start from 8 relievers against San Diego like they got last year, because that's not going to exist with the way this pen has been. And I don't know how they're going to switch it up and change it up, because I think it's a mental thing. I think when you're going through a week just before where you blow leads like this, a 4-run lead in the 8th and then a 3-run lead in the 7th, you're just questioning what you're going to do in middle relief. Ohtani pitches 6 innings the other night of just shutout ball and gives them a chance, and he doesn't get a win. And Blake Snell, all the same thing. It's like, do you let these guys just go 8-9 innings in the playoffs, which is what you might have to do to win it? The rumor is they're going to bring Ohtani out of the pen. So I don't, a lot of big things happening. But the Dodgers got the tools, but I don't know. They're gonna get their Mets will get their kryptonite with the Dodgers. So they might get through the first round, and then all of a sudden here comes Philly, and then that'll be the test for them. But I don't know. It's just so wide open in the American League, especially. You got to like the Yankees, but last night you're watching the Yankee game and they get 3 walks to start the game, bases loaded, nobody out, and can't get a runner in. Two guys strike out. It's like, what's happening in baseball that the pitcher doesn't get a hit, doesn't get a 1 out of hit ball, and they get out of a bases loaded inning. It's shocking to watch.
Productive out is a thing of the past. That we've seen. That's been going on for a long time. Where if you're you're going to ground out, do something that advances the runner. But they just stand up there and take a call third strike or swing and miss
Yeah.
wildly at balls that are out of the strike zone. That's the new MO in Major League Baseball, and it's unfortunate.
I one more thing on this. First and third yesterday, I'm watching the Nationals and the Braves. Garbage game. I'm just having on the two TVs. I'm sitting and walking through the hallway, and I
Yeah.
see a first and third with two outs, and Alvarez is up, and the second baseman, the guy's hitting 220, hardly plays. The second baseman is basically behind second base.
Right.
The first baseman is guarding the runner. So he's got the entire right side of the infield to just take a ball. All you got to do is hit a little blue pop-up, like check swing, and go that way, and the ball gets to the second base, dirt, and it's going to get through. They don't do it. He pops up to the third.
Now, we kind of lost you there, a little frozen. Mike Jones at a key point in the program. Might have to have you, if you can hear me, Mike, tap back in because you are stuck in a very, very awkward-looking position. And we want to get into some football here on the program as well because we were handicapping some games yesterday on another show we do on Bleacher Brothers Network called Break the Bank. And I don't have the ability to drop you here, Mike. So hopefully you're hearing what I have to say and you can punch out and punch back in. But a lot of interesting games on the college slate and also in the pros. Some very difficult games to pick. The marquee matchup, I guess. Well, you could look at a couple of games in college football. Very curious about tomorrow night's game between the Florida State Seminoles and the Virginia Cavaliers because you have Florida State scoring 143 points against a couple of cupcakes after beating Alabama in a stunning surprise to start out the season. Maybe Alabama was highly and vastly overrated. Florida State coming off an abysmal 2-win season the previous year. Wasn't expected to do much. They were double-digit underdogs, 2-touchdown underdogs to Alabama at home. And he managed to win that ball game in impressive fashion. The final margin was 14, could have easily been 21. So they look great. Gus Malzahn has come in to lead their offense, and it looks like, to give Mike Norvell credit, some guys like Dabo Swinney, they might not capitulate. They bring in a highly touted and largely successful offensive coordinator, but then they run their same offense. That hasn't been the case with Norvell and Florida State. So I'm real curious to see. This is a 6.5, 7-point line. How Florida State performs on the road against a Virginia team that has capabilities. And that will set the stage, if Florida State is impressive there, that will set the stage for the ensuing week where you have the University of Miami, which I believe is overrated at this point at number 2 in the country in the AP poll, having gone and witnessed that game against the Florida Gators, who don't generate any offense whatsoever. And sure enough, they left them hanging in that ball game for the longest period of time. It's a one-score game. Could have been a 3-point game late in the third quarter in a game where Miami was dominating. We've talked about that earlier in the week. So that'll be some matchup there if Florida State prevails over Virginia and ends up going against Miami. Miami coming off a bye going into that game, but having to go on the road and play in Tallahassee. So that'll be interesting. You have Penn State and Oregon. Seems like a lot of people are ready to embrace Penn State in that particular matchup. And then Mike and I yesterday on a show, even though there he goes. Hopefully he'll tap back in and we'll get him on the show here to talk about Alabama and Georgia, which rates as a very close game. I mean, you look at all the analytics and there you are, Mike. You look better.
Yeah, you froze, and then all of a sudden I had to get out and get back in. I'm sorry for.
Yeah, I mean, we had you in a state of freezing, and it looked like Ted Williams' head hanging in that cryogenics lab in Arizona somewhere, upside down, hoping that you could bring him back to life. And we were able to do that. So I was rambling a little bit here in hopes that you would sign back in. And I ended up now talking about the which game we discussed yesterday on that Break the Bank show, the Georgia-Alabama game, where it just seems like, I don't know, that Alabama under DeBoer has been particularly ineffective on the road in these type of matchups, especially, but in general also. Kirby Smart, the name is applicable and appropriate because a lot of people feel he's the smartest coach on the college football scene right now that Nick is retired, and maybe even had an edge over Nick Saban in that category in terms of just football intellect. But That being said, how do you see that game, Georgia and Alabama? I think most of the country, obviously indicated by the point spread, is thinking Georgia wins the game. Well, would you be willing to lay 3.5 in that one, and back the Georgia Bulldogs?
I want to see Alabama bounce back after the Florida State game against a competitive team. So
Yeah.
my money would be on Georgia at home, 33 game win streak. The advantage. Everybody said Kirby Smart's record against Nick Saban, but it's Nick Saban. Caleb DeBoer is not in that class of coaching yet. Maybe he will get there. I don't know. A little pressure gets relieved with two dominant wins for him, especially the win over Wisconsin, which was a pretty good win. I want to see it. I see it to believe it. Gunnar Stockton, who has an edge of quarterbacks, played pretty well. Talked to her in today that he's 80% in the fourth quarter, though he hasn't been really competitive. But he had one game against Tennessee, which he did play well in the fourth quarter. Yeah, it's going to be between the hedges, great game, and I would probably want to see Alabama show me that they can win a game like this before I can put my money on them.
Okay, and the other marquee game that sort of is being overlooked a little bit, I believe, by a lot of people. I haven't heard too much discussion on this. Penn State and Oregon. We did see Miami juxtapose positions there with Penn State. Penn State was number 2 in the country. AP poll, Miami, by virtue of its win over Florida, somehow catapulted its way into that spot. Penn State and Oregon, interesting. I mean, it's taking place in Happy Valley. Penn State is favored. Any thoughts on that matchup, Mike Jones?
So Penn State does what Ohio State and Texas don't do and play a little bit of a lesser schedule going into this week. I think FIU, Villanova, Nevada, all the 3 games that they played. And now they get a big step up in competition. Coming off the big backyard rivalry with Oregon State last week, might have Oregon a little bit up for, a little bit better position mentally for this game. I just think Penn State at home, Oregon traveling. Let's test Oregon out. Penn State's got to be ready. This is the game that they're really looking at. So I might have a tendency to lay 3.5 and take my chances that all the hype on Penn State early in the year to get to the national championship game comes through here. I just think it's, the eye test says really that Oregon there, but why is Penn State this kind of a favorite is what I always looked at a lines maker knowing a little bit more than me. And I like the 3.5 lay here with Penn State.
Okay, and another game that figures to be a big attraction and might be another dart throw for a lot of gamblers is Ole Miss at home against LSU. LSU has been winning, but every week it seems like we're watching a Brian Kelly press conference where he's screaming at some reporter, "Hey, you don't know what you're talking about. We're playing great football. We're winning. What do you want us to do?"
Mm-hmm.
So while he's shown some stress, they did beat Florida 20-10, but we saw Florida generate. Well, they had 5 picks in the ball game, and Florida was incapable of generating any offense in their game against Miami. So I'm not sure that didn't diminish the victory over Florida, especially with 5 turnovers, and you only win 20-10. I haven't seen much of Ole Miss. I'll admit to that, but they're regarded well enough to be favored at home, but only by 1 and a hook. What's your thinking on that one?
I'm going to take you down a different road. I'm going to say forget the game against Florida. Look back at the Clemson win. Everybody said that was their best win going. Now Clemson's winning 3. So is that win worth anything? So who was LSU didn't even come close to a cover against Louisiana Tech, right? I mean, the Florida game after last week doesn't look like that's that impressive anymore. Now they go on the road, first big road game at Ole Miss. And I'm going to throw something out right here for everybody, not gambling wise, but coaching wise. I think Lane Kiffin's got to be a candidate for the Giant job if things go south, just because Jackson Dart's there. So does Lane Kiffin really want to put on a show here a little bit, win a couple of big games, and say maybe I get my way back in the NFL because the SEC grind or road to get to a championship might be a little harder now with Texas and Oklahoma in the conference. So I might like a little bit of Lane Kiffin there. I put it out yesterday on X that Lane Kiffin would be my choice for a new coach, and ESPN just so happens to run a Lane Kiffin special the night before.
Yeah, I watched him last night.
Experience. Yeah, so
Lane Kiffin.
I just like Mississippi in this spot. I was not overly impressed with LSU, and I think you're really stating the obvious, and I think things that you have to look into. Brian Kelly gets mad in that press conference. Does he have the right team? Does he have the right guys? He left Notre Dame where I think maybe an easier player to coach possibly. And now he gets down there, and there's all this backup. Ed Ogeron wins with great talent, and Brian Kelly's supposed to be this great X's and O's guys, can win at all levels. But yet Ed Ogeron is way ahead of him down there, what Brian Kelly thinks. So maybe Brian Kelly feels a little heat. I see a lot of anger going after kids. Maybe it's not taken too kindly by the base and the players in the locker room there. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there, but we're going to see Saturday. I like Mississippi in this spot.
He just has to hope somebody on Jackson Square doesn't have a little Brian Kelly voodoo doll, because we know that in Louisiana, strange things can happen there
That's
in
right.
the swamp. All right, any other games on the college slate that you have a fancy for,
Well,
Mike?
I mean, we go back to my homegrown guys. You caught a late cover with Missouri at 13. South Carolina was getting 13.5 last week from Missouri. They held on to win by 9, so you kind of middled the game. If you look watching that game, like in Missouri, lay 6.5 at halftime, down 2, and you get a cover. I kind of look at that game like, why is South Carolina 6.5 point favorite the way they're playing against Kentucky? Maybe Kentucky's on the way out. So I might have a tendency to get the crowd base a little home, get a little fun, and maybe Sellers plays a little better. He looked a little better in the second half, made some real NFL throws. So maybe, a South Carolina look might be something I'd be looking into.
All right, NFL slate also has a couple of
Yeah.
attractive marquee matchups and tough games to select. But you can, we're right in the midst of the high Jewish holidays, and being a
Mm-hmm.
member of the tribe, I always love the Jewish slang word for crazy, and that is Meshuggah. And you can call me Meshuggah on this one, because I'm going to bet this game with a small measure of confidence. And it comes up on Monday night in our hometown. Now, you're talking to a guy who's been married 3 times unsuccessfully. You're talking to a guy that was gambling since he was 5 years old, and in some kind of way, shape, or form, been in any number of jackpots, including with the federal government. So, I don't know that I'm necessarily one of those sources that you can say, hey, I have ultimate confidence in this gentleman. But I really feel like the Miami Dolphins are going to get their first win of the season against the New York Jets. I have not been as impressed with the Jets as some people have. They've been in a couple of close games. They got blown out in one. I didn't. I mean, ultimately, they're in the game against Tampa Bay. They get the lucky block of the punt and a touchdown off of it, and then still blow the game to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who've been resilient in that fashion with Baker Mayfield leading fourth quarter late drives for victory. But I can't imagine that the Dolphins being as bad as they've been so far. They did show signs of life in the Buffalo game. I thought it was a little weird that the people in the organization were embracing this as if it was a major breakthrough, because they're still 0-3 and they lost by double digits in the long run to the Buffalo Bills, a team many feel is the best in the AFC and maybe the best in the league. But I just think at home on a Monday night, you're looking at the personnel on the Miami Dolphins offensive side, still unproven what Aaron Glenn's going to be able to do with the New York Jets. Is it possibly a close matchup? Maybe so, but I'm willing to lay the 2.5, and I'm going to bet that game with a little bit of confidence. And at the same time, I'm thinking about, if you're really a close friend of mine, Mike Jones, maybe you want to Baker act me for that before it happens. I don't know. What do you think? Somebody's all has to go, as we say in the boxing game. And only in this case, it's in the win column, unless it ends in a tie. But I think the Dolphins at home are pretty safe, laying 2 and a hook in this
Yeah,
particular.
I might have a tendency to agree with you. I think the line tells you that a little bit. I'm surprised that they're even a favorite in this game. My the Jets have been a little bit more competitive with better competition, I would think, playing undefeated teams. But going down to Miami, a little humidity, a little tough spot, and desperate situation. Miami's got the extra 3 days to prepare, which I think might come up and be a point here that might make me lean a little bit toward Miami. I think, me personally, we're going to hold away from the Baker acting, but I think I might stay away. It's not a game I'm 100% confident in, but yeah, it's going to be interesting. Who goes to 0-4, and if Mike McDaniel loses this game, there's going to be some pressure.
You would have to think that there'll be a high anxiety around the Dolphin offices, and that heads might be rolling. It might look like the Lucky Strike lanes there in the hallways of the Dolphins facility on the Tuesday following that ball game if things don't go well. All right, a couple of key matchups. You have unbeaten teams. We mentioned the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They've been very fortunate, as have the Philadelphia Eagles in getting to 3-0. And we were talking about it yesterday on another show, Mike. Um, I think it's like throwing a dart in this ball game.
Yeah.
That same measure of confidence that I am permeating the atmosphere with about this Dolphin game. I don't share that in this one in a selection. How do you see that one shaking out? Philadelphia favorite on the road against a Buccaneer team that usually gives them fits.
Yeah, I picked Philly yesterday, and I still think that, but I have been a little bit wavered because I just found out we have a few more injuries in the defensive backfield for Philly, and I think that's a problem with the attack. Then I also heard that they might get Chris Godwin back, Tampa. I know they're going to miss Mike Evans, but they replace a guy with a quality guy. So, Baker Mayfield's played real good. You have 3 last possession wins for Tampa. They're keeping it exciting. They're undefeated. But they've had Philly's number recently, beating them the last 2 times, won a playoff game. So I think Philly might not forget, and that's why I like him in this spot. And the line is telling me 3.5 is it. But I'm going to look at the injury report and see Tristan Wirfs is supposed to come back. I think if he doesn't play, it'll be a decent bet for me. If he does, I think it's kind of would help them on the line front. They're going to miss a guard, the right side of the line, a guard and a tackle are out. I just think you need against Philly, you need to be physical. You need to have your line all together to have success against them. I know Philly got lucky coming back from 19 in the second half against the Rams to an amazing cover. If you weren't watching, they blocked the field goal, which normally would end the game, and it would run off instead. Jordan Davis picks it up, runs in a touchdown for the last play cover, which was crazy. So I don't know. It's a really tough spot. I think it'll be a good game. I know it's on local television out here, so I'll be paying attention to it closely. But I kind of like Philly a little bit in this spot.
I'm with you on that. I share that opinion. Godwin and Wirfs both listed as questionable. And as we all well know that follow football, if you're on the injury report, unless you're listed as deceased, you're likely to play. Although Evans was doubtful, and I'm pretty sure that according to all reports, he won't be available for them. But we'll see how that impacts the game. The Buccaneers pretty good against the run. We haven't seen your guy Saquon Barkley really break loose yet with any kind of big game. He's way off his numbers from last year through 3 ball games. And Jalen Hurts not exactly putting up staggering passing statistics, but Philadelphia doesn't need it. They're very lucky to win that game against the Rams. So maybe they take that into account and put up a better performance. But I believe overall they're probably a better team than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But we'll find out. And then lastly on the NFL slate, great matchup here. 2 teams that were supposed to win it all are always expected to. One of them is going to be 1-3 coming out of this ball game, and that would be the matchup with the Ravens and the Kansas City Chiefs. Another difficult game to handicap. Chiefs, I think, get Worthy back, Xavier Worthy. That's been one of the theories that Mahomes just doesn't have the receivers to work with so far, and that's compromised their offense. Offense, not exactly impressive. They played your G-men, and really, Giants were in there with a shot. If they had done anything offensively, if Russell Wilson didn't stink the joint out, Giants were in there with a chance to beat Kansas City. Ravens put a lot of points on the board, but this is not the 2000 Ravens defense, which a lot of people just automatically assume, they're great defensively. They haven't been. Giving up a ton of points, 38 to Detroit, 41 to Buffalo. What do you see happening out there? Because, the oldest adage in the book is if you're getting points with Mahomes, take them, and especially if that's happening at home, which is rare.
Yeah, and the interesting part of this, and you look into the notes and things you read, is the inactive list has had Jair Alexander on it 2 weeks in a row now. He had struggles against Buffalo. I know he got beaten in the Buffalo comeback, and now they've left him as a healthy scratch. And that blows me away because they paid money for him to come over, thought he would help the answer next to Humphrey in the other corner, and he's been out at scratch. So I think that is probably the number one indicator is what's really happening in Baltimore, that maybe there's some problems psychologically with their defense as well. I know they missed Matabuke, the big tackle that stuffs the run there. He wouldn't play Monday night, and it showed. Yeah, this game is really interesting. Who goes to 1-3? Does Baltimore survive at 1-3? The Chiefs probably do because of the pedigree in house. That they might be a better off team to come back with 1-3. Tougher schedule maybe for Baltimore, but I think this is the Lamar Jackson game. I think this is the game that you see. I think he wins it, and I think you see him come out there. They have the edge here as far as going up. Kansas City seems to have Baltimore's number. Beat him in the championship game on the road a couple years ago that would have given Baltimore a chance to get to the Super Bowl. I just think the line's telling you now it's up. I saw some 3s and 2.5s out there. I saw it 1.5 out, went. So I'm kind of in a belief that maybe it's Baltimore's way. But man, way they got shredded Monday night, I thought they got their beaten up a little bit. which is not what you usually see with Baltimore. So I'm not in love with the game, but gun to my head, I'd probably look at Baltimore. But again, how do you stay away from Mahomes as a home dog? It's just that's 2 games in a row you're going to see as a home dog. You didn't cover against Philly, and now you get him as a home dog against Baltimore. And again, I go back to my game, which is I always somehow it all relates to the Giants, but that play he made probably saved. If you had the Giants, you lost the cover on that defensive play he made. If nobody doesn't understand this, he threw a lateral back to the back, and the ball got taken out after he had just done it a couple plays, like a series before. And the Giants, Dane Belton didn't pick up the ball, and Bobby Okereke actually had the ball in his hand running into the end zone. And Mahomes actually stripped him, and the ball never hit the ground. He just took it right from him on a tackle.
Yeah.
Unbelievable athletic play. I made a statement that he was the best defensive player of the game and the offensive player of the game in the same game, which is a first, but that's what I probably said because that turnover, the Giants might score there, go up 13-6 before the half, and it's a totally different game. And so that's kind of what what you think about Pat Mahomes. So his greatness would say to you, God, you love him as a home dog. So I'm not really in love with this pick, but again, gun to my head, I'm gonna take my shot that Lamar Jackson makes a statement and that your opinions on the Chiefs are there, that they're not the same team that they have been.
Doesn't seem to be. All right, one final thing, and you were in Vegas for many, many years, immersed in the degenerate culture. The adage always was they send a taxi cab for guys that are trying to pick the sides and the over-unders, and a limousine for anybody playing teasers. And with that perfect prelude to you, I think one of your plays this week is a big teaser.
Yeah. I mean, I really like the Packers, and again, I get worried when I see everybody in the world on them. But I came out with this right away that after watching Dallas and in that frustration, losing a bet of the over in the Dallas Chicago game where 38 points are scored in a half, and I got the whole fourth quarter to get one score, and Dallas can't get in 4 shots from the one. But what I saw in that game, it's hard to see that when you're watching your team play against the Giants. But when I'm seeing that game, if they don't kick a 65-yard field goal, Dallas is 0-3. And Green Bay just handed a game by a bad decision by Jordan Love. Normally they would win that game by 7, and Green Bay might be a 9-point favorite in this game. I like Green Bay. I saw it drop. It went up from 5.5 to 7, then it dropped down to 6.5. I like Green Bay a lot in the teaser. I don't think they lose the game. And then I'm going to add another game, same thing. And the statistics tell you that over 78% of the time, if you take a 6.5-point road favorite, not a 7, not an 8, see that we're on favorite down to a half, that bet does hit more than likely. And the Chargers are 6.5 over the Giants. And I listed 2 guys who really understand what they're doing, and the Sharps are going to be on the Giants at some point because that's what they do. But in this particular case, I just don't know. I think the stat is Harbaugh is 4-0 as a Chargers head coach against rookie quarterbacks, 7-3 against a number all time, including his time with the 49ers. I think Jackson Dart gives the Giants a lift. I think it definitely will increase the atmosphere in the stadium for sure. I think one of the reasons why the Giants made this move is because of the Chiefs fans, the amount of red that was in the stands, I think bothers the Mara family. I know that for a fact. And so I think this is kind of a move that Brian Dable's trying to save his job, and I think it's obvious people are reporting this, and it might be desperation. But I just don't know that I see the Chargers losing this game, although the stats also tell you that if your West Coast team playing a 1 o'clock East Coast game doesn't favor them. But I just look at it, the Chargers are playing so well, found a way to come back and beat Denver last week. Would beat Kansas City down in Brazil. They just look better. The Raiders on Monday night have 3 division games. Travel. Tough spot, but I'd be surprised if they lose. So I'm going to take, to win the game, the Packers and the Chargers.
All right, I feel compelled off of that selection to give out the picks of Teaser Man, who hit last week. This is a guy that we have great respect for. He operates under some kind of a secret dark cloud, but occasionally gives us some information here. He hit last week with Pittsburgh, Seattle, and Chicago in teasers. He's going the opposite way on the teaser, went with the Giants getting 12.5 instead of getting 6.5. And he's combining that, his teaser 3-team teaser parlay. Giants plus 12 and a hook, Pats plus a half, and the Bears plus 7. That's the Teaser Man this week, who has been hot for a long, long period of time. So I just felt compelled to share that information.
Yeah, and those all those bets are interesting. That I like that he's on my team, so I got something to root for him for.
Well, it's interesting too because how teasers work. You're going one way and
Right.
reducing the number of points down. He's going the other way and saying, "Hey, the Chargers don't blow people out with their style of play right now." So
Won't be surprised if we both win.
wouldn't that be wild? All right, Mike. Always a pleasure, my
Thanks.
friend. You have a good one. Thanks so much for being with us. I'm glad you were able to regroup and get out of that frozen position because whenever you're doing these kind of streaming shows and a guy freezes up, it's never with a good, favorable look on his face.
That's all
It's always
right.
one of those pictures that you want to make sure that you trash before anybody gets a chance to see it. So, but as handsome as you are, it turned out okay. And thanks so much for being able to get back here on the show. We won't be with you tomorrow. We had something come up. So next time we'll join you, we'll be again with Mike Jones on Monday. We'll recap the weekend and have the Monday night game for you. And we'll know a lot about what's going on in the Major League Baseball playoffs. So we'll have some handicap and thoughts on that for you as well. For Mike Jones, I'm Jeff DeForest. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in to this final edition of the week of Bury Your Bookie.